Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas Wacker, and welcome to the Monaco Grand Prix race recap episode here for round number 5 of the Formula One season. We'll break down qualifying a little bit here, as well as the race itself. You know, it is Monaco. We'll preface that off the top of this show. But before we get into looking at the Grand Prix weekend in the streets of Monte Carlo, our thoughts and prayers are with the friends and family of former FIA president Max Mosley, who sadly passed away at the age of 81 today. He was an instrumental figure in growing the sport and improving the safety of Formula One. So we want to give our condolences and our best wishes to the family of Mosley and all the friends and the entire F1 community that are impacted by this tragic loss. So wanted to start off the episode on that note, but let's look at the Monaco Grand Prix weekend, shall we? Qualifying, we kind of went into this weekend. We saw from the practice times on the Thursday that Ferrari came to play this weekend. They seem to have quite a bit of pace, and the track seemed to suit their liking and suit that car's liking. And qualifying really emphasized that as Charles Leclerc wins the pole for the Monaco Grand Prix, but he crashes on his final lap and in Q3, bringing up the red flag. He crashes into the barriers in the swimming pool section, and that would prevent the rest of the competition from completing their final lap, as the red flag would be called, stopping the session, and none of the competition that seemed like they were going to be faster than him on their final runs could get that final lap time in. So as a result, it seemed like Charles Leclerc would start from pole for Sunday's Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton qualified all the way back in P7, so a disappointing qualifying session for him when you look at his teammate Valtteri Bottas all the way up in third. So just a off weekend for the 7-time world champion, but we'll mention him a little bit later on in the Grand Prix itself. But and as well as a notable storyline from qualifying, Daniel Ricciardo misses out on Q3 after a disappointing weekend overall for the Aussie driver. A former race winner here, of course, in Monte Carlo, and just was struggling in practice. Couldn't quite get the braking. It seems to be the biggest issue for him in his new McLaren this season. And definitely here at Monaco, you need to use the brakes quite a bit to maximize the lap time. And you can see that Daniel Ricciardo is just still trying to get up to speed with this new car, which is unfortunate because this is a track he's very, very good at, and we didn't quite get to see the full potential that Danny Rick had to show this past weekend. So we'll see what he can do next time out in Baku. But for the race itself, just it is Monaco. We'll look at the race in its breakdown here. After the damage, we'll start before the Grand Prix even began, because the morning of, it was a whirlwind of emotions if you are a Ferrari fan or specifically a Charles Leclerc fan, as he as Ferrari on their social media, they did a thorough inspection, thorough investigation into any potential gearbox issues or any mechanical issues here for Charles Leclerc before the Grand Prix to solidify him starting P1 on that first grid slot without having to take a grid penalty for changing the gearbox or some sort of thing in Parc Fermé, which would result in a grid penalty. And they posted on social media. It seems like they're good to go. The checks all went well, and Charles Leclerc on his installation lap from the garage from the paddock to the starting grid ends up experiencing a gearbox problem, some sort of mechanical problem in the rear of that car. And he would be, unfortunately, it's just heartbreaking for Charles Leclerc. He would not even get to start his home Grand Prix. The Monegasque driver, obviously going to be an emotional time for him. And, he has never finished a Grand Prix in Monaco, which is crazy to think for a guy that grew up on the streets of Monaco, grew up here. He has not been able to even reach the checker flag so far in the 3 appearances that he's had here in Formula One. So just disappointing for him, disappointing for the race itself. Would have been very, very interesting to see what he could have done out front. It seemed like the Ferrari still had pace when it had its remaining car and Carlos Sainz still out there. So what kind of battle could we have gotten between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc at the front of this field for the majority of the race? It completely changed the landscape of the race and the storylines coming into the race itself and throughout. So disappointing that we didn't get to experience that this time out. Still a great storyline that Charles Leclerc got pole, the Ferrari getting some pace back, and we didn't see that remotely anywhere last season that they were close to that kind of speed. So that's encouraging signs for Ferrari. Hopefully that's a step in the right direction for them. But at the same time, they've kind of said that they've focused about 90 to 99% or 90 to 95% of their efforts into the 2022 car, which obviously has the new aero package and everything's changed going into next season. So if that's what 90 to 99% looks like, or 95% looks like, kind of commitment to next season, that's pretty impressive for them to still put an effort like that out onto the track this weekend. But the race itself, Max Verstappen still starts in that second grid selection because that first one is still vacated by Charles Leclerc absent. So Bottas still starts from his usual kind of P3 slot, but Verstappen gets off the line decently. Bottas has a little bit better of a start, but Verstappen cleverly positions his car into a very strategic position to try and block off any challenge from the right-hand side, and he does that to perfection as he would lead from Bottas and Carlos Sainz into turn one, and that was kind of the race out front. Verstappen controlling the pace. Very difficult to overtake around Monaco the entire weekend, and that's what you expect on this kind of street circuit, where it really comes down to the driver testing them mentally rather than the overtaking process. We prefaced that in our preview episode coming into this weekend, where this isn't going to be the most entertaining Grand Prix, and it definitely wasn't. But we have to appreciate what these drivers are still doing behind the wheel of these Formula One cars, that they are able to max out each and every lap and not hit the barriers. It takes extreme precision. Oh my goodness, what a nice word to say. But it definitely a character building weekend for a lot of these guys. It takes an extreme amount of focus for them to really execute well. It takes an entire team to do an entire weekend like this. Qualifying is really where the race is won. But unfortunately for Charles Leclerc, the race that he was looking to win here in Monaco didn't even get really a chance to get going for him on Sunday. But we moved to the first set, or the only set of pit stops in this event. Tire wear wasn't an issue really in this one for a lot of the competitors. Valtteri Bottas pits into the Mercedes, obviously, area, and they would have another instance of bad luck, as Valtteri Bottas's right front lug nut would be absolutely bolted in to the front axle, which would prevent the tire carrier or the tire changer from removing the right front tire. Was sat stationary in the pit stall for many seconds, and then after a while they realized they couldn't get the tire off, and as I'm recording this right now on the Monday, they still have not been able to get the tire removed according to reports. So will he still have that right front tire when it comes time for Baku in 2 weeks time? Who knows? But definitely heartbreaking for Bottas, who seemed like he had secured a podium place for sure due to his efforts in qualifying and is putting in a very solid shift in the race. But bad luck for him. He would DNF the Monaco Grand Prix, and just a heartbreaking, just another bad luck instance for Bottas. It seems like he has these very often, and this was just another instance to add to the list. So unfortunate for him. But, you know, there wasn't much overtaking, if any overtaking, really throughout this race. You saw Mick Schumacher dive it up the inside of Nikita Mazepin in the first hairpin on the first lap of this race. He ended up getting the position. But apart from that, not much of the actual on-track overtaking. But probably the most notable moment of this Grand Prix was for the TV director himself, as during the kind of cycle of pit stops, it was a very intense kind of midfield battle there for the bottom half of the points paying situation there between Pierre Gasly, Sergio Perez, Sebastian Vettel, and Lewis Hamilton. It just seems very odd to see Hamilton kind of in that mix after having such a strong start to his season. And funnily enough, he was down there with some of these other guys that he's not used to battling on a week-to-week basis. But Lewis Hamilton ends up coming in for pitting first amongst those guys to try and do the undercut. But then Pierre Gasly kind of blocks him off after one lap. So he narrowly beats out Hamilton to stay ahead of him after his pit stop. But then Sebastian Vettel and Sergio Perez do the overcut. They'd go long on their strategy, which has been proven to be quite successful on the streets of Monaco. And it was once again for both of these drivers, as Sebastian Vettel overcuts. Oh, sorry, we have to look at Lance Stroll on a replay here going over the curb in the swimming pool section. Oh my goodness. The TV director. I need to take a moment here because as a sport media student, I don't know everything about the broadcasting side of things, and Kyle can speak to it as well. We're not experts on it by any means, but we have a very good idea of what goes into making a sports broadcast. We've done hockey, we've done basketball, volleyball. There's been numerous occasions where we've been able to be in the control center and work physically on the broadcast of some sort of sporting event, and the amount of prep time and everything that goes into something like this cannot be overstated enough. But it's an extremely difficult position to be in. Saying that, though, the TV director, I had no previous knowledge of this prior to this kind of incident here. So the TV director for the Monaco Grand Prix is not from the traditional Sky Sports and F1 kind of broadcasting company that usually does the majority or the rest of the F1 calendar. This time it's from a French broadcaster, TMC. They run the broadcast for the Monaco Grand Prix due to a partnership or some sort of agreement between the two parties. And so it's just a one-off TV director for this race, and it definitely showed a different tone. Sometimes they showed some stuff that you wouldn't usually see in a broadcast, or interesting timing of some sort of things. They were very big into the differential kind of graphic where they showed the intervals between two drivers. But for this instance here with the TV cutting at the absolute worst time, it's probably the worst case I've ever seen, but it made the entire race worth it for the memes that we saw on social media afterwards. Absolute bangers from everybody out there. That really great to see some sense of humor. So, but for the incident itself, Sebastian Vettel exits the pit lane side by side with Pierre Gasly, going up the kind of S section up the hill, and the TV camera cuts away to a replay of Lance Stroll going over the curbs in the swimming pool section, and we didn't have a full replay of what actually happened really after that as well. So absolutely horrendous from the TV director. I can't really cushion the blow or anything like that for him. It was brutal, and that was the only really on track kind of action that we saw in this race. So the fact that he decided to use it at that time to show a replay of something that didn't really need to be replayed, they were really scratching the bottom of the barrel to really find something to keep the fans entertained. But it is what it is, I guess. So I understand it's tough to be a TV director, but that's just a big no-no, and definitely a harsh-looking moment there on them. But for the actual on-track product itself, Sebastian Vettel squeaks ahead of Pierre Gasly, and that's where they would kind of stay for the remainder of the Grand Prix itself. Hamilton was left baffled after all of that kind of cycling of pit stops really unfolded. And Perez, as I mentioned, does the overcut. He even goes ahead of Sebastian Vettel due to his pace. So he ends up P4, Vettel P5, Gasly P6, and Hamilton back in P7. So Hamilton actually kind of loses places at the end of the day because Vettel and Perez both started behind him for the Grand Prix, but due to Leclerc and Bottas's DNFs, Hamilton kind of has a net gain of 0, but on track wise, he got passed by 2 guys, but luckily he had 2 DNFs ahead of him in the running order. So definitely an interesting call from Mercedes to put the undercut on Hamilton after he said that he was conserving the tires for an overcut strategy. So didn't quite work out for Hamilton's game plan there, and he's going to be left baffled after and scratching his head a lot after this one, as is the Mercedes garage after this one. But from then onwards, it was simple, predictable, pretty much boring race from there. I mean, it is Monaco, but this is still on the back half of how entertaining Monaco could be. Saying that, though, it still was impressive to see the drivers push to the absolute limit there for 78 laps around the streets of Monte Carlo. But let's get to the finish and how it all ended up. Max Verstappen wins his first Monaco Grand Prix. What an incredible drive from the Red Bull Racing driver. He takes the lead of the Drivers' Championship now, 4 points ahead of Lewis Hamilton going into the Azerbaijan Grand Prix on the streets of Baku. And wow, just an incredible performance from him. Red Bull also take the lead of the constructors standings for the first time since the turbo hybrid era started back in 2013 was the last time they were officially in front of the competition on the constructors standings by only 1 point ahead of Mercedes, but it is still an advantage nonetheless after Sergio Perez finishes fourth there. Put some pressure on Lando Norris for the final podium place in this one, but just difficult to overtake and couldn't quite get the pass to work for him, but still fourth, very solid from him. So Red Bull getting a 1-4 finish while Mercedes has a DNF and a 7th place from Hamilton. Not a great showing from them overall, but you expect Red Bull to do well. I don't think anybody saw Mercedes having this bad of luck or having this bad of a performance this weekend. So Red Bull maximized what they could this weekend, and definitely very, very cool to see a championship battle through the first 5 races of the season, as tight as ever, tight as we've basically seen in many, many years. Not even the Rosberg and Hamilton one started off this close at the beginning of the season. So just goes to show you, Hamilton won 3 of the first 4. Verstappen's won the other 2 now, but this one result, that 14-point differential, I believe it was coming into this weekend or something along those lines. I'm not 100% sure on that. Is now gone. It's in the dust. We're basically back to square one. So huge for Max Verstappen to keep his championship bid alive. And he goes into Baku with the championship lead. He becomes the 64th different driver to lead the driver's standings as well. And Honda have not led the Constructors' Championship as a power unit manufacturer since Ayrton Senna and McLaren won the 1999 titles in both the constructors and the drivers championships there. So it's been a long time for Honda to have this much success, and it's been a long time for Red Bull to have this much success. So it's very, very interesting season that we've got on the cards here, folks. No matter what you say about the Monaco Grand Prix, the history that it presents is undeniable, and it's not about as much the race itself. It's the storylines that we got from this one that will carry on for, I'm sure, many, many weeks here as the summer months become even more thick and fast as we go to Austria, Silverstone. We've got obviously Baku. I believe we have a couple of others in there. We got the French Grand Prix, Belgium, all of these ones, Hungary. I mean, I think I've probably missed a couple as well. But we've got some very, very great races coming up, and the championship battle should be as spicy as ever when we head to a very difficult track there in Azerbaijan. But for Carlos Sainz, he finishes second there, his first podium for Ferrari. And then Lando Norris completes the podium places, his first career podium on the streets of Monaco. Max Verstappen's first career podium on the streets of Monaco as well. So what a way to do it there for all 3 of those guys. For me personally, I'm a huge fan of all 3 of these guys. I couldn't have asked for a better podium, hence the graphic that I posted on our Instagram page. Shameless plug there at the Green Flag Pod, as well as on my design account at Wacker Design. So make sure you go check that design out, because I was pretty proud of the end result of that. And I really wanted to commemorate the McLaren livery with that Golf sponsorship. It's one-off livery, very, very beautiful. And Carlos Sainz getting his first career podium for Ferrari. And then Max Verstappen leading the Drivers' Championship for the first time in his career. I think those are all notable reasons why there should be a graphic made for that one. But in terms of the stats, that's kind of all I've got for you. But Lewis Hamilton finishes P7, ends up finishing where he started. As I mentioned, kind of some circumstances helped him to finish P7, or else it could have been much, much worse for the Mercedes driver. And then a quick shout out to Antonio Giovinazzi. He takes home Alfa Romeo's first points of the season back in P10, was solid in qualifying, made it to Q3, and ends up finishing there as well. That's really, really great for him. Awesome result for them. And then I believe it's Lance Stroll there in P8 and Esteban Ocon in P9. That kind of rounds out your points paying positions there for the Monaco Grand Prix. And an interesting kind of little tidbit that's come to light afterwards here, just looking back a decade to 2011, the podium is basically an exact replica of what we saw in that Monaco Grand Prix, with Red Bull's number 1 driver, Sebastian Vettel, winning that race. Then we have Max Verstappen winning this one. Red Bull's obviously clear number 1 driver. Then we had in P2 a Spanish Ferrari driver, then Fernando Alonso, now Carlos Sainz, and then a British character finishing P3, and Jenson Button for McLaren back in 2011. And then, of course, we have Lando Norris finishing P3 in the 2021 version of the Monaco Grand Prix. So we're seeing the ushering in of the future now become basically the present here, with all three of these guys being very, very consistent. Lando Norris moves back up to P3 in the driver's standing as well, just really solidifying himself as a true talent at the front of the grid. And it's just remarkable to see the growth that we've seen from all three of these guys over their very young F1 careers. I believe it is the second youngest podium ever in Formula One as well. I think the Gasly, Sainz, and Verstappen podium back in Brazil in 2019, I guess, is the youngest of all time. So this one comes a very close second. So very fun stats there. Very fun little tidbits there from the Monaco Grand Prix, despite the race not being the most entertaining. But let's give a driver of the day, shall we? It's only seems fitting here. It seems a little bit cliche to use the one that they use for the broadcast. I had a tough time with this one. I think Sergio Perez definitely was deserving of it after his drive there to put pressure on Lando Norris. I think Norris deserves a very good shout out there as well, with conserving the tires there at the end and holding off Perez. But he had the track position, so I can't quite give it to Lando. Verstappen, perfect really race weekend for him to get second in qualifying there, and then of course finishing first in the race itself. But I'm going to give it to Sebastian Vettel, as the fans voted as well on the race broadcast. He scores his first points for Aston Martin, and that's a huge confidence boost for him. And I just love to see Sebastian Vettel get some points after a very much a struggling time for him over the past year and a half. Hopefully this is the sign of Aston Martin really starting to, find their groove. Of course, a double points finish for the team as well. So that should go a long way for them. And of course, they've been in the kind of conversation on social media, maybe not for their on-track performance, but for that Lance Stroll kind of replay, as I alluded to earlier. So congrats to Sebastian Vettel on winning the driver of the day, not only on this show, but from the fans as well, worldwide there, and definitely deserving of that honor. To conclude the episode, let's give this an overall rating, shall we? Like I said, it's not going to be the most entertaining race, but the storylines that we got from this Grand Prix will go a long way in kind of giving us the season that we're all really hoping for. Hamilton having one of these one-off weekends, it's imperative that Verstappen strikes while he has this opportunity, and he did, and that's what we're really looking forward to as the season rolls along. As consistent as Lewis Hamilton is, he may have one or two of these races throughout the year. Verstappen has to strike while the iron's hot, and he did that in the streets of Monaco this weekend. So I'm going to give it an overall rating of 4 out of 10. So not a great overall rating because the race itself wasn't entertaining whatsoever, really. But the storylines itself gives it a huge bump up, the history that was involved with it, and just seeing a podium like that, Carl Lando and Max Verstappen on it in Monaco, brings a smile to my face. So really great to see those guys having success so far, and only the best for them is really in the future for their careers. But I think that'll do it for this Monaco Grand Prix race recap episode. Lots of storylines. Unfortunate for Charles Leclerc, that's the big disappointment from the weekend. But for Verstappen, it's a huge elation, as well as Sebastian Vettel, and of course your podium finishers. Hamilton's left with a couple of question marks at the end of this one, wondering what could have been or what could we do to improve in the future here as a team. And we'll see if they get the ship righted there for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Green Flag Pod, as well as Twitter at The Green Flag Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. We would really, really appreciate it. All the links to our social channels will be in the description of the YouTube video. We're closing in on 100 subscribers, so thank you all so much for your support. And we've got, obviously, a huge weekend in motorsports beyond Formula One this upcoming weekend. The Indianapolis 500, Scott Dixon on the pole. Should be interesting to see how he does in that one. And the NASCAR's longest race of their season at Charlotte Motor Speedway with the Coca-Cola 600. So we'll have previews for those two races coming up later on this week with myself and Kyle coming back on the show, of course, for our usual preview episode. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But for this episode, I've been Lukas Wacker, and Kyle and I will talk to you later on this week to get you previewed for those two epic motorsports events.